I have a fun one that may be contentious because I'm going to say some fighting words.
All right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ilya.
And my name is Tylor. Together we make up Kovray, a couple that loves to play board games.
And today we have an extremely special video because it is our top 10 two-player games of all time.
All time.
Now, 3 years ago now?
I think it was 3 years ago.
We did a two-player month where we
Mhm.
played over 50 two-player games and we went in heavy.
We did.
And since then, we've been gathering our two-player games like the Infinity Stones. We've played over 100 at this point, and now we're here with our 10 each that we think are the best of the best.
Exactly, yeah. The 10 that we think are the best, if you asked us to rank all 100, good luck with that because the top 10 was hard enough for me. I think I would be able to get like the bottom, the very bottom, just because of vibes. I'd be like, yeah, 100.
These are boots.
But even then, like, I don't even know if the 75 to 100 would matter. I think they would just be like scrambled. Like I'd be like, sure.
Yeah, it depends on the mood, I think.
Right?
Yeah, it's very dependent. But the top 10 were very difficult because I think there's a lot of factors that I had to consider of like which one do I want to play at all times? Which one is really good in this type of scenario? Which one is really good in this genre? And I think there's a lot of factors that went into it. Production quality, art, like the experience, the memorability. Because there's some games too that I absolutely loved, but looking back at them now, I don't remember them as much. So did I fall in love at first glance? And was it like fake love? I don't know.
Yeah. And then there's a bit of recency bias. So what we did do is we went back and took a look at what our old top 10 was, just so we could get a better sense. We've been slowly trying to play through all of them again as well, and now we're here to talk top 10.
Exactly. This video will not have any honorable mentions because we've done another 10 games that did not quite make our list over on our Patreon. So if you're curious about that and want to support us further, feel free to check out that video in the description down below.
Exactly.
But with that said, we can kick it off into our number 10 with me going first.
There you go.
Which my number 10 is Kelp.
Nice.
Shark versus Octopus. Now, this is a recent release, and it is an asymmetric battle between a shark and an octopus. The octopus plays through cards and tries to hide from the shark, where the shark primarily uses dice to navigate the board and attack the octopus, hoping to strike.
Yeah.
Now, this game, I'm not a huge fan of asymmetry, but with two players, it just makes sense because you know what the other one does. And this game, I found myself coming back to it and wanting to play the other. Like, anytime I lost, I'm like, oh, the shark is so much easier, and then I play the shark, and it's not that much easier. Yep. Or you feel that one is harder. And the balance is really fun. And this is a game that you can continue to pull out and play again and again and again. And really navigate your way through it and try to get into your opponent's head. The other aspect I'll say for it is it's gorgeous.
It is.
It is not only a beautiful game, but it's really intentionally designed, I will say. Everything has its place. It makes sense. It flows smoothly. And we really, really enjoyed this game.
Yep.
Where I have, at least.
I mean, you put it in your top 10, so you definitely enjoyed it.
I
did enjoy this game. I like the asymmetry that it has to offer. And like you said, is the going back and forth. You play one, you play the shark, you then want to play the octopus, and then it's cool. You get to know each of the characters pretty well, and you don't have to worry about how your character interacts with like maybe 3 or 4 other symmetrical characters.
True, that's too much big brain for me.
Exactly.
So that's Kelp, and that's my number 10.
Take it away. All right, my number 10 is a crunchy game called Polis. And essentially, if you like war-esque area control games, then Polis is definitely something that you'd want to check out. It's a lengthy game that's actually only played over 3 different rounds. You've got 11 actions to choose from on your turn, and it is one of those games where you go back and forth between each player, and then once both players have passed, there's like a cleanup and round end phase, but it's very tricky. You have to time the moves very right. It does take a while to play. Like on the box it says 120 minutes. That's probably accurate. And then of course you need to learn how to play the game if you haven't played it. But the tricky thing, I guess the cool thing is it's based on like historical facts. So that's like an edge towards it. And
it's Athens versus Sparta.
Yeah.
The classic battle.
Exactly. And you are like making decisions and set up into certain situations where you are like it gets pretty crunchy. And like I said, my favorite part about this is the timing of those actions. You're not allowed to take the same action twice, like during your single turn, but timing one correctly can be huge for your strategy. And when you do that to like outplay the opponent as well, it feels really, really good.
Almost feels like you're like standing around a map deciding where the troops will go and strategizing, and kind of gives that vibe. But it's a lot of fun to play, and this one's definitely one of my favorite, like the crunchy ones that you jump into.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's not just war, like there's battles that end up happening depending on where you go, but there's like you've got to build up certain statues, you've got to create like you have to focus on the economy that's happening so you're able to do these things, and it is very important to like balance when you do actually want to get into a battle, and that's always an interesting.
There's a cost to war after all.
And that is my number 10, Polis.
My number 9 is also another recent game called Yellow House. Now, there's so much I love about this game. And I had to think really hard, like, is it the recency bias, or is this a game that I want to come back to time and time again? And at the end of the day, it was a game that I wanted to come back to time and time again. Because it's a fairly simple card game, but the innovation where it comes is just really the way that your cards influence the track.
Yeah.
Because your strength of the cards is how you play them will influence the little tracker marker. And your whole idea here is to get rid of your hand. And your hand corresponds to different elements of art that you're trying to have a debate with your fellow housemate over. And it just plays extremely clever. There's quick, witty actions you can take to really outsmart your opponent, and it never got boring for me. I feel like it's a game that I would want to pull out, quickly play with somebody, and it can be a classic on my shelf from time to time again.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun game. It almost reminds me of like a trick-taking game, but you're like just shedding your hand, and then like different
kind of like ladder climbing almost too, and setting the different. It's just so clever.
Yes,
and I love when the game I feel like this game hides all of its complexity in its design, so it actually feels like you're playing a really simple game, but there's complex outcomes of your actions.
Yeah, I found when we first started playing it, it was kind of like, it felt very straightforward, but then when I started like seeing why I was losing certain things, or like the win condition of collecting the cards, like that became a lot more interesting to me. And like most games, you play it first and you're just trying to figure it out, and then later on you start to develop a strategy. It's very apparent here, even though this is just like a card game.
It grows on you, and it's a classic that can be had with all fun friends and family.
Exactly.
Yay, Yellow House.
My number 9 is maybe not technically a 2-player game, because I believe you can combine things and make it more, but we do just have the small box, and that's Star Realms. Star Realms is technically a 1 to 2-player game, I think. No, 2 players, yeah. You can add more players.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It says actually on the box that you can expand for more players by simply using an additional deck.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's like...
It's not cheating.
This
is a 2-player game.
Base game is 2-player, and I actually think it plays really, really good at 2-player. You are a fleet admiral, I believe, and you're basically fighting against your opponent to make sure your stuff stays alive and their stuff gets destroyed. It's a deck builder, so you're going to be trying to figure out how to combo off like your cards better. Drawing is obviously something that is huge in this game, and being able to manage your resources and make sure you're getting the right cards for your deck feels really, really fun.
It's a lot of fun. I feel like there's a lot of good memories with Star Realms.
There is.
And I also believe there's so much like expandable content for this game.
There's like a giant box. I missed out on it, and I haven't bit the bullet to try and find it, kind of thing.
Maybe you should. It is your top 8
is my number 9.
Or 9, oops.
Yeah, it is my number 9.
Of your top 2-player games.
But anyways, that's all I'll say about this one. It's a small box. You can travel in it. Travel with this.
You know what my one qualm is? What? It doesn't have its title if you place it on its side. And even like these sides, they don't like you have to display it like this to know what it is.
But I mean, it's so small. Why does it matter?
It is so small.
There you go.
But I like compactingly putting things into the shelf.
Good game. Star Realms.
Star Realms. My number 8 is Botonic. Now, I feel like this game kind of fell off people's radars, and that is unjust. It needs to come back on people's radars because it's such a good game. The way this game works is you're essentially drafting tiles, and then you're placing tiles in the center, either on your side or in the middle column. And there's a really clever mechanic of almost releasing tiles of you and your opponent that you can choose to do.
Yes.
And that in essence I think is the core unique element of the game, but the rest of the game is like tile placement. You're trying to connect pipes, connect groups of the same color, and get as many flowers as you can. But that drafting mechanic and placing tiles in the center, it is so clever and it feels so smart. That paired with the quirky art style that this game brings, chef's kiss.
It is a pretty kooky art style. I will say the drafting for me is very interesting. It does feel very take that-y. And I think maybe that's why it didn't make my list.
Fair.
But I do agree that the drafting is the most interesting piece to this game.
And I don't necessarily agree if it's like take that, because you're always doing things that benefit yourself.
Yeah.
But there are times, well, you'll try to block, you'll release your tile but not release your opponent's, for example. And those are the clever plays of trying to make it so you can benefit more than your opponent, which is what two-player games are all about.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So that is Botanic.
My number 8 is a game called Curious Cargo.
Look at us go with these pipes.
I know. Oh yeah. I guess this is more large scale pipes because it's delivering things onto trucks.
Oh, big pipes. Mine are little pipes?
Yes. Yeah. Because I think yours is like a Botanic is like a
little
an,
irrigation flower
thing.
pipes. Yeah. Okay.
Anyways, in Curious Cargo, you are going head to head with your opponent to essentially like pick up and deliver better than they do. But on your turn, you're going to be placing tiles onto your board to make these pipe connections that will release different colored chemicals into
not chemicals. Parchments.
Parcels.
Parcels.
It is Curious Cargo, and it has the chemical side.
They could be chemicals.
Anyways, you are delivering these to trucks, but the cool thing about this is the trucks will be like moving forward as you progress through the game. So not only do you have to like time the drop off properly, you have to also like be very wary that the drop off is not always the greatest idea because your opponent can almost not steal it, but like mess with it. And I think that's really interesting. The pipe laying is tricky and puzzly, and I really, really like that part. And then you're basically just going back and forth until like the end game is triggered. And that basically means you probably did the pick up and deliver better than your opponent.
And don't forget, this is a pretty brain crunchy game.
It is, yeah.
But there's an opposite side where all of a sudden your pipes
like
are... there's three instead
colors?
of two.
Yeah.
So it makes it even more complicated. But it gives me that vibe of like, you know, in like Bugs Bunny when the conveyor belt goes and it just like falls because there's no like right place to go. So...
Yeah, it feels a little goofy when you're unable to load things onto stuff, but it will happen eventually, I promise, and you'll puzzle your way through this one.
You can do it.
That's Curious Cargo.
We're gonna skip my number 7 because it is higher on your list. So
That's
we'll talk
true.
about it when we reach it on your list.
So I have to talk about my number 7 now.
Which is?
And that game is called Caper. I'm actually gonna take the sleeve off because it's beautiful.
Wow, sleeve off, everybody.
So Caper is a, two-player game, of course, but you're basically trying to plan a heist. And the way you're doing that is, actually they're trying to plan several heists, I guess, but you're putting together teams and equipment and things like that to place into the heist that you think you'd be best at doing. And you'll essentially be influencing the heist against your opponent. So you'll want to make sure that you're the one that like wins the bid. It is reminiscent of like an Air, Land, Sea type game, but I think this one's like a little bit more elevated, and the fact that like there's some fun little twists and tricks with item cards, equipment cards, and the abilities that are offered by each different character, I suppose. But you go through these phases, you'll take turns going first, and then the interesting part about it at the end is like you'll go through completing the heists, and whoever ends up with the most points ends up being the winner, and it feels really, really fun. But it's like that head-to-head game where you are in fact like playing the player, and I really, really enjoy that.
Yeah, I think what I'll add too is the Keymaster makes such high production quality games. Like Parks is fantastic. This game is on that level. It just feels like such a quality experience when you play it, and it's very different each time you play it. Having a variety of, I think, cities that you visit.
There's different types of heists.
Lots of heists to do. Makes me want to be a villain.
Well, there you go. That is Caper.
Okay. I have a fun one that may be contentious because I'm going to say some fighting words.
All right.
It is Monsterlicious. So this is based on an older game called Pecking Order, and I think Richard Garfield had a few games that had the mechanics with the theme.
Right.
But basically it's a head-to-head game where you draw tiles and you place tiles on a certain number trying to vie for control.
Yeah.
You'll always place face down. And when there's two, you'll battle it out and see who's higher. And sometimes you can scare off other tiles. Sometimes there's opportunities to do some actions.
Or straight up just win.
Yeah, but by the end of it all, you're trying to have the most points across the whole board.
Yeah.
It's just so clever. And I feel like there's so many two-player games where you're playing a card back and forth. Like I'm thinking Smash Up, Air, Land, and Sea. Like those types of
Caper.
games. Caper, I guess. Where like it's back and forth and you're playing a card. And I think by the end of it all, you're just trying to control what's in the middle. I think this game scales all of that down, eliminates all the unnecessary complexity, I will say, and it creates a really streamlined and fun game that feels extremely good each and every time.
Right.
And the reason it feels so good is because this game has so many big moments. Because you're not able to control what tile you'll draw, but you know what's in your deck. But based on what you draw, you can trick your opponents. You can go and be like, oh, I don't need this tile. I'm just going to put a low number here. And then bam, it's the high number. You've tricked them. You've won that location. And you've won the entire game by 1 point because of that.
Yeah.
The more that you play, the more that you get to know your opponent. And this is a game that you can come back. And I think having like themes like monsters, having cake and candy, or playing the Pecking Order with a bunch of birds.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic.
And the Jaguar.
And I just, this feels like a classic two-player game for me. And again, also a shame that people don't talk about it as much too.
I think this version is newer.
This version is newer.
But Pecking Order was like
way
in the
older.
90s.
It was 1900s.
So 1900s.
The 1900s. It was.
Oh, jeez. I mean, yes. But, like, when you say it like that.
Back in the 1900s.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's a great game. I think Pecking Order is fantastic, and I also think that this one is fantastic. I love the facelift that it got. And it's cool. At a certain point, you begin to be able to read the board as well. So, like, you can kind of guess at what they might have placed there. You can guess at like what they still have in their deck based on like what's actually been played already and space up. And yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to take a step back and strategize that way, I guess.
That's always an enjoyable aspect of two-player games.
Yeah.
And that's Monsterlicious, baby.
Hey. Ilya's gonna talk more because my number 6 is on his list, but it's higher, so.
Well, that means we're on to my number 5. Yes. And my number 5 is Fox in the Forest Duet.
Nice.
I bet you've been waiting for it. When are we going to do a cooperative game? There's all these back and forth battling.
Oh yeah, look at that.
So, Fox in the Forest Duet is a trick-taking game in where you're trying to pick up all the gems in the forest.
A cooperative trick-taking game.
Exactly. So, there is a Fox in the Forest as well, which is also a two-player game. It is a competitive trick-taking game. But this version is just incredible. Because what you're doing is you're playing tricks, and based on who wins and how many paws you have, you'll move your little marker.
Yeah.
And if you land on a space with a gem, you'll collect that gem. You'll play over 3 rounds and more gems will come into play. And you really have to think quite hard in order to win this game. And I feel like this is one of those games that you either lose or you squeak out a narrow victory.
Very, very close.
And it feels just so much fun every single time. It feels like you're doing something together. The theme is really fun as well because you're just in the forest. You're a fox in the forest.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just frolicking. You're just looking for those little rubies.
Rubies. I agree. It's very clever. I like the puzzle that it is. And the first round goes by, you're like, oh, this is easy. And then next thing you know, it's not. You have to really plan ahead and then also hope you get the right cards and that you're using the abilities on the cards correctly because they can be game-changing.
It leaves you, and there's ways to scale up complexity, I believe, too, and make it a bit tougher.
I can't remember, actually.
Yeah, I thought there was, but it's been a bit since we've played it. So it does...
Well, I played it the other week. We didn't do a more difficult version, though.
Is there a more difficult version?
I don't know. Anyways.
We'll report back.
Yeah.
But in general, this game, again, feels like a staple in the two-player world. It feels like a classic. It's a game that we've recommended to almost anybody who enjoys two-player games.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have not yet played it, I would recommend it.
It's very approachable. It's very easy to teach.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that means my number 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is this game called Targi. And it's so good.
Good.
So basically there's a grid and then there's cards that go in the middle of this grid. And at the start of every round, you place your workers, you have 3 of them. You place your 3 workers onto different cards and then you make intersections. And then based on the intersections and the cards you've placed on, you get to take the actions that are available to you while also like collecting resources, finishing their Targi card. I think they're called Targi cards, but like the tribe cards. They're called tribe cards. Mm-hmm. You then can collect those, which is part of the end game, which is necessary for scoring yourself more points. And it's that simple, but it really isn't that simple. The way you order the actions that you take, completely up to you, but you need to be very cognizant of those, and you need to make those decisions like very, very. You just have to be wise about the decisions that you make, and I think the fun part about that is, at first you're like, oh, I know I want to do this, 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 and this, and then the other player comes along. Maybe fiddles with it a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're like, great, what is it actually that I'm trying to do now? And you have to adjust. And although it does feel kind of solitaire in a sense of what you're trying to accomplish and the workers you're placing, it also ends up being risky because they can just the other player can just place their worker on the card that you were hoping to place on, and then you've got to wait or like pivot, and it's just it's a great game.
It really feels unlike any other two-player game. This one it hurt my soul not to put this game on my list because it was on my list last time. And there's also an expansion as well, so there's ways to kind of layer up the experience and kind of continue diving.
I don't think I've played the expansion. I know we have it, but I don't think
I think I played it once when we got it, but I think it's just one of those games that like there's nothing like this game. So if you really enjoy two-player games, like this is a modern classic that I would definitely come back to and really encourage you to check out.
And it's just smooth. I really appreciate that.
Oh.
All right.
These are some good games.
That is my number 5.
So my number 4 and Tyler's number 6 is Fields of Arle.
Boom. Look at this chunky one.
I will do a spoiler. Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small was very high on my list last time. This game has taken its place.
Yeah, that's fair.
So this is another Uwe game where you're essentially building up a little farm. And will you make buildings? Will you nurture animals? Will you clear the canal so you can take more land and do more with it and have various structures of buildings come in? Who knows? You'll play over its seasons of summer and winter, and the core of this game is placing your workers to get resources and upgrade them and do many fun things with them. Now, if you've played games like Agricola, Caverna, or any of Uwe's games, some of this will be familiar. But I will say this is not punishing at all. Where I think there's games where it just hurts. It hurts a lot of everything you're doing. You're struggling to feed everybody. Agricola. Agricola is definitely the one where it's not ideal. This one, you're having a hoot. You may not do the best, but there's opportunities for take actions that other player has taken already. There's opportunities to enhance and strengthen your actions. And at the end of the day, what you create is going to be special. What you create is going to be different from the last time you've played it, and it's going to be your own. And this is one of those games that I can see players completely falling in love with it and playing it every single day, trying to build something different, trying to outmaneuver the other player, because there's so much ways you can explore this game and explore the different strategies it presents. Overall, this has been like our grail. We've been looking for this game for a long time because it was out of print for a long time and it was really hard to find.
Yeah, it finally came back in print at our local game store. Where it's like, got it.
I was just like,
we immediately picked it up.
So, and I'm happy we did. I look forward to playing this game many, many more times. And I do believe there's expansions as well, or maybe
there's one at least.
There's at least one that we have to dive into and learn a little bit more about.
Yeah, we don't own that one though. Mm-hmm.
But that's my thoughts. On to your thoughts.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let me speak a
Sorry,
minute.
I forgot it was on your list too.
Yeah. It's lower on my list, so it's better if you speak about it, actually. So what I will say is Ilya pretty much nailed it. I think the cool thing about this is it's a 2-player game, but it's a worker placement game. So like one of the things that I worried about when I first started playing is that there was so many worker placement spaces that like my decisions wouldn't necessarily impact Ilya's decisions.
Oh boy, did
And
they.
yeah, was I wrong? Because like you can cross over to the winter side and vice versa to be able to take those actions. And sometimes you need to because the other players blocked it. But there are like several actions that like wrap your strategy, that really make your strategy. And then there are other actions that are fundamental to both players' gameplay. And I really liked the idea of the collecting and then sort of pick up and deliver of the goods that you are doing, and then being able to like blaze a trail to new heights and new places so that you could drop off cargo.
I think the other quick thing I'll add before we move on is I love that when we were first learning this game, it felt extremely thematic because we were both like, what are we doing in this farm? And we'd be like, what are you doing? Yeah. So we felt like we were just like neighbors trying to like figure it out what we're doing on a farm together.
That's true.
And trying to do it better than the other person. Like, oh, they got cattle, maybe I should get cattle.
I mean, it is one of those games that's like pretty crunchy, so strategizing for this is like you look at it and you're like, well, what the heck do I do?
What do I do?
But honestly, just trust your instincts, go for it, and then like the first play will be something that you'll remember. It might not be the greatest, but you'll want to play it again.
And again. And that's Fields of Arle.
My number 4 now is a game called Jaipur.
So good.
I think I'm saying that right. Anyways, this game is like a drafting game. It's really important. Timing is very important in this game because you are essentially running a market and then selling the goods so that you're able to collect these coins. And it's sort of like a supply and demand type situation that's going on. The earlier you get into selling these types, the different colored goods, the more points you'll get rewarded. And the nice part about this is it's actually really, really smooth in terms of what you're actually doing on your turn. There's like taking cards, trading cards, and then grabbing the camels.
Gotta take the camels.
Grabbing the camels. Or there's selling goods. And that's like essentially the game. It's super straightforward, but I feel like the fun part about it is the way that the market cards come out is really important. The battle that happens between the players of like, I'm grabbing this color good, maybe stay away from it. Or maybe you're trying to like block somebody from getting the highest colored coin, so you're able to like do it slightly quicker than they are. And then that back and forth is really, really interesting because you don't want to waste too much time doing the wrong thing. Because like I said, timing is really important in this game, and for that, I think that's the biggest reason I like it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also pretty simple. It's a card game with some tokens, and this is another one that it deeply hurt me because this was on my list last time, and it just missed it this time.
So good.
It just feels like a classic. Like everything you're doing, it feels familiar. It's also a game, like we can open this game and play it immediately.
Yeah.
Maybe not having played it in a while.
Oh yeah.
It's not a game you forget. You jump into it really quickly and you're able to see the strategy pretty easily.
And it's a quick game, so you can always just play it again if you're feeling up to it. Like I said, it's like the biggest benefit for me is that it's like easy to play, and then it's got like a lot of immediate satisfaction with like a good amount of headbutting that's going on.
Headbutting.
Yeah. There you go. Jaipur, my number 4.
Your number 4. My number 3.
And also my number 3
is
this game that snuck into our collection last year called Flatiron.
This game is so good, and I'm sure you've heard us talk. If you're new to our channel, welcome. If you're not, you've heard us talk about this game the last couple of months, and we've been raving about it quite a lot. But the reason this game is so good, and I'll leave it at 3 points. Number 1, the aesthetic. First of all, the cover. Look how gorgeous this game is, and how cool is it is that you're able to actually build skyscraper throughout the game. So the aesthetic is simply. Number 2, you get to do more as the game progresses because you're collecting actions for each of your little streets, and then you'll do all the actions from top to bottom on the street, which is really exciting because it's in the beginning you're gonna just stumble in, try your best, get that coffee, drink it as much as you can, but by the end of it you're a master architect. The walls are going up, you're doing much more, you have influence, you're just making all the things happen. And number 3, the player interaction in this game is outstanding.
It really is.
Because not only are you blocking people, you're always paying attention to what the other player is doing. Or you need to in order to have a good game. Yeah. Because there's stuff that they can do to get significantly ahead of you. And you're always kind of trying to balance the weight of where you're placing the worker. Because you need to make sure your opponent cannot do that.
Yeah, it's a slow burn at first for sure. And that's my favorite part. Like, it is an engine builder. And I think with the worker placement piece that Ilya is talking about, it makes the game really, really interesting. I wouldn't put so much emphasis on it as maybe you are, but that's maybe my opinion on the strategy of the game. It is really important to, of course, think ahead and understand the possibility of being blocked, I guess, essentially.
Or blocking.
Yeah, or maybe even blocking people. But so that's like an interesting thing that's going on. I do think that most of the time you're doing it out of the benefit of yourself.
Yeah.
Or I guess like a quarter of the time I find myself slowing myself down to slow you down even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do have a point.
Well, I think because you're trying to do the same thing. And a lot of the time, like, I just don't want you to do it before I get to do it.
Well, I mean, like, the cool thing about the game is that there's 4 different types of like resource stacking that happens, and they're all different for everybody's board. So you aren't always like, we're not competing for the blue stack doesn't get me as much as your blue stack would get you.
That's true.
The orange stack gets me way more than it gets you. So like there's
some asymmetry there
bounce
as well.
that has to happen, and I think that's super, super cool. Of course, building up that skyscraper, and then the timing of this game I think is really, really important when the planning comes down to it. You can't be too slow with your engine, but so you do have to bounce off of what the other player is doing, but you have to time it right, and then you can score yourself a lot of points. There's big swings in this game that I think are like very, very crucial to the game. It makes people like push back and forth a lot more, and I really like to see that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Would highly, and I do believe it's going to be more widely available in the future. I think right now it's hard to find in North America. But I do believe it's coming to be more available as time kind of goes on. Yeah,
100% would recommend checking this game out when you get the opportunity. There's a lot of variability that goes along with this game as well, so you can look forward to that. And I believe it has a solo mode. Yeah, it does. It has
and people have been we have not tried it yet, but people have been praising the solo mode. Yeah. But enough about the solo mode. This is a 2-player video.
That is true.
Tylor.
All right, but that is our number 3, and we can move on to your number 2.
My number 2 is a classic.
Of course it is. Of course.
And it is Patchwork. Now, if you have not played Patchwork, go get it right now. Go play it.
Oh, I thought you were saying leave.
No, don't leave. Jump in. I'll tell you about Patchwork to hopefully convince you to try it. But I think Patchwork, to me, when I think 2-player game, I think Patchwork. Because this game is extremely simple, but it has so much replayability and so much fun strategy in it. The core of the game is you're going to move your little piece, and you're going to choose one of the 3 tiles that are ahead of it. Yeah. And you'll place one of those 3 tiles onto your board, which will end up being your quilt. Your goal in this game is to collect the most buttons. And you'll collect buttons by grabbing the little tile pieces that would gain you more buttons over time, and spending buttons strategically, because in order to grab a tile, you have to spend the buttons to pay for it. So there's an economy of kind of back and forth, and you're always, as you progress and as you move around the corner, there'll be button rewards for you as well, or button like giveaways.
Well, it's like a trigger point.
Yeah, trigger point where buttons for everybody, or just for the player whose turn it is. And you'll try to fit all those little polyomino pieces to create the best quilt that you can. You'll get bonuses for filling in the gaps. The game can also be pretty punishing near the end. You can lose a lot of points if you don't build your quilt completely the best way. So sometimes they're not very high-scoring games. But in the grand scheme of it all, it's just a cozy, fun game that you can play with somebody else. And because the tiles always come out differently, it feels different each and every time.
I mean, the thing is it doesn't matter the score as long as you have a higher score than your opponent.
Yeah.
If you're going for the wins, then that's really what matters. You just have to have a higher score than your opponent. Doesn't matter what it is. So
Exactly.
I think that's always an interesting thing. I really like Uwe games that do this, where he uses the resources, your victory points as resources to also make things happen. So you really have to like balance that like give and take, and then hope for the best at the big reward kind of thing. And yeah, it feels really good.
It just feels fine. Fine as heck.
And there's actually so many different versions of this.
There is. There's a Halloween version with eyeballs.
Valentine's Day one.
With chocolates.
Yeah.
There's also like different countries versions with like their colors and flags.
Yeah.
And I believe there's a recent anniversary edition that came out that's just gorgeous.
Yeah,
but if you're interested, definitely check out Patchwork because I do feel like you'll love it.
I would get like a domino style version of this.
Well, like
That would be
acrylic
really cool.
tiles?
Yeah. That would be cool.
Lookout Games, get on it.
Yeah, that would
Acrylic tiles, let's see it.
be very cool.
That would be very fun. That's my number 2.
My number 2 is your number 7, I believe.
My number 7, that is correct.
Yeah. So we're going to reach over here. And it's this game called Seven Wonders Duel. There's 3 ways to win this game. Military, science, and civilization, I think is what it's
Civilian.
called. Civilian, okay.
It's gotta be a person.
Yeah. So this game is 3 rounds. 3 rounds of drafting cards and then using the cards that you draft to make things happen. The fun thing is there's different pieces and different types of cards where you'll build your engine, where you'll force your opponent into awkward situations because you are going to war with them, or just like simply protecting yourself from that actually happening. And I think the draft element is a lot of fun. It's this pyramid draft where you can see some of the cards, where but you can only draft cards that are fully visible on the board, and then when you take one, it gets flipped back up, you're able to draft that one now, and it's just an exciting little puzzle to try and figure out. And then of course, because of the victory conditions, you have to be very like vigilant of which one you're going for, and open-minded, because you won't always be able to say, I'm going science this time around, and I'm going to win science. And that you just have to be able to like adapt.
I think that's what that's what I'll add as well, is the big moments I always remember in this game is when the pyramid kind of shrinks, and by you taking a tile 2 or flipped, and the flipped ones could be the ones that Tylor needs, and you just like, I don't want to take that one. Like, let Tylor take that one and give me opportunities to take. That's more fun. And just that whole aspect of you can plan what you want to do, but this game is, the core of this game is adapting. If all of a sudden Tylor is just rushing for science, I have to start collecting the science symbols, or else I'm just going to lose. And I think a lot of the times you do end up going to that civilian victory where you just score a lot of points through a variety of the ways that your board is set up.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like the civilian trigger is like
End of the
complete draft has been completed. Science you can win right away, and then military you can also win like as a trigger. So it's always interesting to see what path you take, and then also like being able to like we both been saying, adapt to even block the opponent from being able to win the way that they're trying to win at that moment.
And if the theme doesn't appeal to you, there is a Lord of the Rings version.
Yes.
That's a variant of this game. I will say, I think this game is better. It just feels better. There's some stuff in Lord of the Rings that I just enjoy more in this game than the other one, but they're very similar.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that I think that it's like leveled up in like components. But I don't know if it...
Well, there's a map that's also introduced.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like,
I think like this is a great theme on itself, and then Lord of the Rings would have been in mind for sure if it wasn't for this. I think because this is just better, flat out better. It's just the original. It's great. I love that they've stuck an IP onto this game, but I also don't, because this game is fantastic.
Yeah, I wish it was almost the same as this one. It would have been even better.
And that's Seven Wonders Duel.
And that's our hot take.
Yeah.
My number 1
is also my number 1, which doesn't happen very often.
Except it happened in the last top 10 video, where it was the same number 1.
And it is Aquilin.
Now, I am really ashamed for this to be our number 1 because this game is out of print.
I'm not ashamed by that.
Because I want everybody to play this
I
game.
do want to
I think this
have
game
it.
is absolutely fantastic. So if you're a publisher out there looking to pick up a 2-player game, I don't know if the license for this one has run out, but consider Aqualin. It's a stellar game that is also a classic. I know I say that a lot, but this is their top 10 games, and a lot of them feel like classics to me.
That is fair, honestly. I don't even know where to begin with this game. I think it like stands peers above the other ones in my opinion, and that's saying a lot because this list of 10 games, I like a lot of them a lot. So Aqualin is just this cool little puzzle, almost tic-tac-toe-y game where you're going back and forth with each other, fooling around with this board, but the simplicity of on your turn, you can move a single tile, and then you have to draft one and place one. That's it.
That's it.
The puzzle is now you playing against the person that you're playing against.
And you'll have either a color that you're aiming to collect groups of, or an animal type.
Yes.
And you're trying to spread the animal. If you're the color, you're trying to spread the animal types like apart, but keep the colors together, and vice versa for the other player.
Yeah.
You know, this is a game that I feel like has left me curious because I am not typically drawn to games where you have to like outthink the other player. Because this does feel like a little bit like chess
Chessy,
elementy,
yeah.
and I'm not drawn to those types of 2-player
neither,
games
at all.
So I'm always surprised with how much I enjoy this game. I think partly because it's fairly quick, it's easy to play other times, but this game also has a lot of like, you feel clever in it. And I think there's moments, like, even if you do much poorer than the other player, you're going to feel clever at some point in this game because you're going to create a move that makes it difficult for your opponent to get their group back together.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's exactly what you're just trying to do. You're just trying to be a little disruptive, and I think, like, that's a really interesting from a decision standpoint. You don't have to make these ridiculous moves all the way across the board. You can just move the tile a single space, and that will throw off the opponent's decision like completely. And you also have to be able to like be okay with giving up points sometimes, and I think like that's also a really interesting decision space because you have to say, okay, realistically I'm not actually going to be able to get all 5 seahorse together, or 6 I think is the max you can get together, but I will settle for 4 because I can get 4 somewhere else, which is actually more points. So like the give and take is actually really, really interesting, and I'm here for it.
The point thresholds are really smart. The way the game, I feel like this game is just also, it's so cleverly designed, and
it's cleanly designed.
It's cleanly.
Yeah.
It's like it's just you just want to keep playing it.
Yeah.
But the last thing I'll say is the clicky clackies of the tile.
Yeah, good choice on the tiles.
If you're picking this game up, you better not get rid of the clicky clackies because it's a really core element of Aqualin.
The clicky clackies.
Well, you just like clicky clack.
To the publishers, I get it.
Yeah, because you can easily do this with like cardboard tokens.
Yeah. You know what I'm realizing that it reminds me of? Those puzzles, it almost reminds me of the puzzles in Pokemon where you'd be like sliding to try and get yourself to the entrance.
Yeah.
And it's like manipulating that kind of space, and I really, really enjoy it.
Oh, so much fun.
Last thing. This game takes like 15-20 minutes to play, and most times me and Ilya will best 2 out of 3.
Best 2 out of 3.
Every person,
3 out of 5 are for spicy.
That's true. Every person I've actually shown this to, well, not every person. Majority of the people that I've shown this to, we will play it once, and then we are definitely doing the best 2 out of 3.
Sign of a good game.
It's pretty fun.
Aqualin is our number 1 top 10 2.
Our number 1 on our top 10 2-player list.
There we go. Thank you. You can put it away now.
Woo!
So that has been our revised top 10 2-player games of all time.
Yes.
What did you think of our list? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there games that you have not made the list? Are you shocked? Well, we can tell you about them in the comments down below. And don't forget, we also released 10 more games, 5 each of us,
5, yeah.
on our Patreon of the games that just barely missed it.
Just barely missed it.
And I know I mentioned some that have missed it for my list or Tyler's list. Those are not included, so it's 10 brand new games.
10 brand new games. Yeah.
But if you also wish to support us other ways, we have a Discord where we chat all sorts of games, and you can
simply just hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button if you're new here, because we love talking board games, and just building a community of board gamers.
It's just so much fun to share the joy of tabletop gaming and the clicky clackities.
And the clicky clacks. Not all games have it, but
maybe they should.
It's satisfying when they do.
Maybe it should. Well, for our question of the day, we have, what is your favorite 2-player game?
kind of obvious, isn't it?
I would prefer if your 2-player game is only a 2-player game. But if you really like playing a game at 2 players and it's your favorite 2-player, you can also jot that one down in the comments below.
Yeah, what Ilya said.
Words and happiness. Well, thank you so much for making it this far in the video. If you made it this far,
hello and goodbye, because we will see you in the next one. Bye.